Hi, good day everyone. Today we will tackle about postmodern literature, and here is its overview. Postmodern literature is a form of literature which is marked stylistically and ideologically. It is because it has literary conventions such as fragmentation, paradox, parody, and dark humor, or sometimes called black comedy. It is a style that makes light subject matter that is generally considered taboo. Another is postmodern literature is a reaction to the assumed certainty. Postmodern literature is a general and wide-ranging term that is applied to literature and cultural literacy criticism, among others. Postmodern authors reject outright meanings in their novels, stories, and poems. Instead, they highlight the possibility of multiple meanings. They derive own meanings from their works. Postmodern literature also emphasizes pluralism and relativism and rejects any certain belief. The postmodern literature is anti-authoritarianism. It is refused or it has refused to recognize the authority of any single style of definition of what art and literature should be. It brings down the distinction between high culture or popular culture. It is the freedom to express. Postmodern literature needs more or wants more new ideas. Postmodernism is playful and away from the tradition. Writers in this era wanted more ideas, thus making their works stand out and unique. They also want their works to be relatable to the readers. Now let us discover the time period and when postmodernism began. Postmodernism occurred 1945 and onwards. It was the time when World War II, which occurred 1939 to 1945, the Korean War, which happened 1953, Vietnam War that began on 1955 to 1975, the Cold War in 1946 to 1991, which was caused by United States and Soviet Union together with their allies who locked in a long, tense conflict, and also the civil rights movement in 1954 to 1968. Postmodernism is greatly shaped by the World War II and the 1941 to 1945's Jewish Holocaust. These events affected the artist's and writer's perspective.
Now we're down to literary writers of postmodern period. First we have Thomas Eliot. Thomas Eliot was a poet, essayist, publisher, playwright, literary critic, and editor, considered one of the 20th century major poets. He is a central figure in English language modernism poetry. He is best known as leader of the modernism movement on poetry and as the author of such work as The Westland 1922 and Four Quartlets 1943. Born on this September 26, 1888, St. Louis, Missouri, United States, and died on January 4, 1965, Kensington, London, United Kingdom. His plays are Murder in Cathedral, The Cocktail Party, and The Family Reunion. Number 2, we have Samuel Beckett, was an Irish novelist, playwright, short story writer, creator, director, poet, and literary translator. A resident of Paris for most of his adult life, he wrote in both French and English. During the 1930s and 1940s, Samuel Beckett wrote his first novel and short stories. He wrote a trilogy of novels in the 1950s as well as the famous plays like Waiting for Godot in 1969. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. He was born on April 13, 1906, Oxford, Ireland, and died on December 22, 1989, Paris, France. His movies are filmed in Gin by Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot, Spill, Beckett's on Film, and many more. Number 3, we have Chloe Anthony Ufford Morrison, or known as Toni Morrison, was American novelist, essayist, book editor, and college professor. Her first novel is The Bluest Eye was published in 1970. The critical acclaimed Song of Solomon brought her the national attention and won the National Book Critics Circle Award. She was born on February 18, 1931, Lorain, Ohio, United States, and died in August 5, 2009, New York, United States. Her awards are Nobel Prize in Literature, Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, Presidential Medal of Freedom, and many more. Now we're down to number 4, George Shaw, known as his insisted simply as Bernard Shaw, was an Anglo-Irish playwright, critic, polemicist, and political activist. His influence on Western theater, culture, and political extend from the 1888 to his death and beyond. Born on July 26, 1856, Portabello, Woodland, Ireland, and died on November 2, 1950, Ayot St. Lawrence, United Kingdom. His awards are Nobel Prize in Literature, Academy Award for Best Writing, Adapted Screenplay, and more. His plays are My Fair Lady, Pygmalion, The Devil's Disciple, Caesar and Cleopatra, and Major Barbara. Next, we have down to number 5. Sir Tom Stoppard is a Scottish-born British playwright and screenwriter. He has written for television, radio, film, and stage, finding prominence with plays such as Arcadia and The Cause. Stoppard wrote a number of radio plays, including The Native State 1991, which was reworked as a stage play, Indian Ink 1995. He also wrote a number of notable television plays such as Professional Pal 1977. Born on July 3, 1937, age now is 84 years old, and his movies are Recent Cant of Dinster Are Dead, and Shakespeare's in Love. Down to number 6, we have John Robert Fallis was an English novelist of international renowned critical position between modernism and postmodernism. His work was influenced by Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. Among others, notable works The Magnus, The Collector, The French Lieutenant Woman, and more. Born on March 31, 1926, lived on Seas and Southern-on-Seas, United Kingdom, and died on November 5, 2005, Amsterdam, United Kingdom. 7. We have Italo Calvino was an Italian writer and journalist. His best-known work includes the Our Ancestor trilogy, the Cosmetic collection of short stories, and the novel Invisible Cities and If on Were Winter Nights a Traveler. It is not a great novel, but it is a good first novel from a young man. It was written in neo-realism style, a style he later abandoned as he found his voice in writing. Born on October 15, 1923, Santiago de las Vegas, Havana, Cuba, and died on September 19, 1985, Santa Maria della Scala, Siena, Italy. Award he has is Bogota Prize, Legion of Honor, World Fantasy Award, Life Achievements, and many more. Number 8, we have Erwin Allen Ginsberg, was an American poet and writer as a student of Columbia University in the 1940s. He began friendship with William S. Burroughs and Jack, the visionary poet and founding father of Beat Generation, inspired the American counterculture of the second half of 20th centuries with groundbreaking poems such as Hole and Cadiz. Born on June 3, 1926, New Jersey, United States, and died on April 5, 1997, East Village, New York, United States. Movies are How, What Happened to Kirak, and A Man Within. Last, we have Thomas Pynchon Jr. is an American novelist, a MacArthur Fellow. He is noted for his dense and complex novel. His fiction and nonfiction writing encompass a vast array of subject matter, genre, and theme, including history, music, science, and mathematics. Notable works is The Secret Integration. He was born on May 8, 1931, age of 84 years old now, New York, United States. And that's all for the literary writers of postmodernism that we have in our PPT. But there's a lot of more postmodernism period literary writers. And now we're going to the next reporter, and that's it.
Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. A 1972 novel has a fresh feels each time. Every chapter talks about a city with a different name. So, in Italian, as Li Saita Invisibili, it consists of a conversation between Marco Polo and Kublai Khan in which the former describes a series of wondrous, surreal cities in the Khan's domain. Each city is characterized by a unique quality or concept. The interplay of reality and imagination and the craft of fiction itself are among the work's underlying issues. Next is The Bellfire by Vladimir Nabokov, a 1962 novel which is presented as a 999-line poem. It consists of a long poem and a commentary on it by an insane pedant. This brilliant parody of literary scholarship is also an experimental synthesis of Nabokov's talents for both poetry and prose. Next is The Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, a 1996 novel, has an unconventional narrative structure. It is a story of an addictive entertainment, and in particular how it affects a Boston halfway house for recovering addicts and a nearby tennis academy whose students have many budding addictions of their own. Next is The White Nose by Don DeLillo, a 1985 novel that won the U.S. National Book Award for Fiction. It is a story of a college professor and his family whose small Midwestern town is evacuated after an industrial accident. In Gilani, a professor of Hitler studies at the college on the Hill and the originator of Hitler studies in North America. Next one is American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis, a 1991 novel that is told in the first-person point of view. It is a novel which maintains a high level of ambiguity through mistaken identity and contradictions that introduce the possibility that Batman is an unreliable narrator. The last one is The Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot, a 1941 book that is a set of 4 poems that were published over a 6-year period. So the 4 quartets are poems about a nation and about a culture which is very severely under threat, and in a sense, you could describe the 4 quartets as a poem of memory, but not the memory of one individual, but the memory of a whole civilization. So that's all. Thank you.
Now let's talk about the literary trends and influences of postmodern literature. Late 19th century and early 20th century playwrights whose work influenced the aesthetics of postmodernism include Swedish dramatist which is August Strindberg, the Italian author Luigi Pirandelli and the German playwright and theorist Bertolt Brecht. Another precursor to modernism was Dadaism, which challenged the authority of the artist and highlighted the elements of chance, whim, parody, and irony. Dada or Dadaism, it was an art movement of European avant-garde in the early 20th century, with early centers in Zurich, Switzerland. At the Cabaret Voltaire, c. 1916, New York Dada began c. 1915, and after 1920, Dada flourished in Paris. Dadaist activities lasted until c. the mid-1920s. Postmodernist was inspired by the work of the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. Postmodernists claim that language is semantically self-content and self-referential, which means the meaning of the word is not a static thing in the world or even an idea in the mind, but rather a range of contrasts and differences with the meaning of other words, because meanings are in the sense of functions of other meanings, which themselves are functions of other meanings, and so on. They are never fully present to the speaker or hearer, but are endlessly different. Self-reference characterizes not only natural languages, but also the more specialized discourses of particular communities or traditions. Such discourses are embedded in social practices and reflect to the conceptual schemes and moral and intellectual values of the community or tradition which they are used. Lastly, the postmodernism is known for its rebellious approach and willingness to test boundaries. We may take this for granted in literature today, but there was a time back in the 17th and 18th centuries known as the Enlightenment that was all about order, unity, reason. You can get the idea. We are not saying that postmodernists were the first to go against the grain. Romanticism and modernism had already questioned whether these ideals were possible. Bounce back neoclassical, romantics, and modernism. The difference is that postmodernists are all about embracing disorder or taking a more playful approach.
The last lesson we have under the postmodern literature is that developmental significance. In developmental significance, we have four aspects. The first one is intellectual, followed by society, religion, and of course, the last one is artistic. So, start with intellectual. It says that people use it to actively construct their identities. There is a sense, playfulness, and an unpredictability about how people do this. So, playfulness here is present in many modernist works, and they may seem very similar to postmodern works. But with postmodernism, playfulness becomes a central and actual achievement of order, and meaning becomes unlikely. So, in society, there's what we call the media is constitutive part of people's realities. So it is thus meaningless to say that the media has an effect on the audience. The media is also an integral part of postmodern society. So postmodernism is an approach that attempts to define how society has progressed to an era beyond modernity. Therefore, society will be more likely to experience a peak and mixed culture when deciding a religion, as an individuals will choose a religion that best suits their lifestyles and choices. So in religion, postmodern strengthens perspective of the individual and weakens the strength of institutions and religions that deal with objective realities. Individual may also seek to draw on diverse religious beliefs, practices, and rituals in order to incorporate this into their own religious worldview. So, postmodern religion consider that there are no universal religions truths, or laws. Rather, reality is shaped by social, historical, and cultural context according to the individual, place, and or time. Similarly, version of Hinduism and Paganism may also be interpreted from a post-modern perspective. So in postmodernism, all religion, including Christianity, is reduced to the level of opinion, as what Christianity said, that Christianity asserts that is unique and that is does matter what we believe. Sin sin exists, sin has consequences, and anyone ignoring this truth has to face those consequences. So the last one is artistic, you know. It says postmodernism art advocated that individual experience and interpretation of our experience was more concrete than abstract principles. So that is very clear that postmodernism is um, more concrete than the abstract principles. So postmodern designers salvaged and distressed materials to produce an aesthetic of urban apocalypse. No, so postmodern art is a body art movements that sought to contradict some aspect of postmodernism or some aspect that emerged or developed in its aftermath. So one of the most distinctive characteristic of postmodernist art is the dissolution of traditional categories of art and artworks, and the proliferation of new and hybrid forms that have broadened these categories to an unprecedented degree, even greater than encountered in literature. So it collapsed the distinction between high culture and mass or popular culture, between art and everyday life, because postmodernism itself broke the established rules about style. It introduced a new era of freedom and a sense that anything goes. So that would be all about the postmodern literature. So God bless and thank you.
So those were the things that were important and are needed to learn about postmodernism, its influences, and the effects of it to the people. Thank you for watching. I hope you gained something.